The story begins with our MC, Yamase, rejecting Kojika. He insists they cannot have a relationship because they work together. However, she refuses to accept this, confessing that she cannot stop loving him. Days prior in the office, Yamase is on a tense phone call. Totsuka-sensei angrily shouts about his series getting cancelled right off the bat. He tries to calm him down, urging him to deliver a fitting ending for his fans. However, Totsuka-sensei blames him for the failure and abruptly hangs up. Frustrated, Yamase realizes he will have to call back repeatedly until he cools off. Just then, he hears a voice behind him. He watches Kawasaki discuss an upcoming anime production meeting. Kawasaki has multiple successful series, and his first serialization is already receiving an anime adaptation. Comparing himself to this success, Yamase feels inadequate since his own series just received a premature axe. Realizing he has 0 achievements after 3 years, he slaps his own cheeks to snap out of it. He motivates himself, remembering his career has only just begun. Heading home, he remembers he still has an ace up his sleeve. He arrives at a cafe to meet Kojika, noticing the anime keychains and pins on her bag. They greet each other, and she hands over her latest storyboard. As he reads it, he is blown away by the quality. She has no social media presence and has never published any work, yet her storytelling is incredibly impressive. He specifically praises a scene featuring 2 characters with a complex love-hate dynamic. She happily agrees, pointing to her keychains and explaining how the bond in a popular anime inspired her to capture a similar feeling without copying it directly. Amazed by her potential, he realizes she is a gifted talent who could easily create a massive hit. Eager to help her succeed, he immediately offers suggestions to improve the draft even further. Yamase realizes there is one slight problem. Before he can speak, Kojika suddenly slides into the seat right beside him, eager to know what she needs to change. Startled by her closeness, he hesitates. She asks him to explain everything step by step, and before he can pull away, she suddenly grabs his hand. Confused, he questions her actions. She apologizes, explaining she simply wanted to feel a man's hand for drawing reference, noting the rigid joints and clear veins. Uncomfortable, he quickly pulls away and asks for some personal space. She agrees, but he internally panics, worrying their lack of distance makes them look like a romantic couple. He firmly believes that a relationship between an author and an editor is unforgivable and destined for a messy end. Just then, their coffee refills arrive. He is confused since he did not order more, but she admits she ordered them earlier. Leaning in, she whispers in his ear that this means they can spend more time together. He realizes she is surprisingly cunning and wonders if she actually has feelings for him. Quickly brushing the thought aside, he makes an excuse about having another meeting. He promises to show her storyboard to the editor-in-chief to secure a debut one-shot, then hastily excuses himself. She silently watches him leave before heading her own way. Stopping to catch his breath, he reflects on the exhausting encounter. He laments his lack of experience, realizing that if he actually knew how to maintain boundaries, he would be much more popular. Instead, the only people he attracts are his writers, a dangerous dynamic he knows will only ruin an editor's career. Yamase motivates himself, determined not to jeopardize his opportunity with such a promising talent. He firmly believes that together they will create a massive hit series. Later that night, however, Kojika is at home happily fantasizing about the two of them being a romantic couple. The next day at the office, Yamase asks his superior about scheduling her debut one-shot. His superior postpones it, prioritizing a new anime spin-off series for Kawasaki instead. Defeated, Yamase watches his rival happily chatting on the phone. He recalls their first meeting when they both transferred to the department at the same time. Although they started in the exact same boat, the other editor is clearly thriving much more in his career. On his way home, Yamase gets caught in a sudden, unforecasted downpour. Nearby, he overhears whispers about someone looking as cute as a celebrity. To his surprise, the person they are referring to is Kojika. When she spots him, she hurries over but inexplicably trips and falls on the flat ground. He rushes to check on her, warning her that she will catch a cold since she is completely drenched. She explains she wanted to show him her revised storyboard right away, but the papers are now completely soaked from the rain. They walk to her apartment because she insists she has a backup copy inside. Yamase waits outside her door, internally scolding himself for escorting her home and vowing to maintain his professional distance. From inside, she invites him in and offers him a drink to thank him for his help. He nervously declines, stating he is about to leave. Refusing to take no for an answer, she reaches out, grabs his hand, and pulls him straight into the room. Flustered and highly nervous, he stands awkwardly inside her apartment, desperately trying to shift the focus back to the storyboard. Kojika suddenly embraces Yamase, thanking him for escorting her home and promising to reward him further once she becomes a best-selling creator. She then steps away to retrieve her draft. Still shaken by the sudden physical contact, he stops her to ask a burning question. Why him? He insists he just wants a normal working relationship, pointing out his average looks, his age, and his complete lack of professional achievements. He argues that she gains absolutely nothing by trying to win him over. She counters by asking why he is so confused, claiming she has been thinking about him constantly since that day. She insists she has experienced and felt many things entirely because of him. Completely baffled, he questions what she means, knowing their professional relationship has only just begun. Leaning forward, she rests her head against his chest and whispers that she promised to come find him and always watch him. Her chilling words trigger a sudden, horrifying realization. He remembers his past career writing extreme tabloid articles and flashes back to a tense prison visit. Through the visiting glass, an enraged inmate screamed at him for writing a fabricated, two-faced hit piece. As she aggressively scratched at the glass, she promised to track him down and watch him forever. Snapping back to the present, he looks down and realizes the hand resting on his chest is making the exact same scratching motion. Trembling, he calls her by her real name, Shiga Shizuka. Memories of the horrific crimes that landed her in jail flood his mind. Terrified, he shouts and bolts out of the apartment, sprinting frantically through the pouring rain. As he runs, overwhelming guilt consumes him. He flashes back to his former boss, a ruthless tabloid director who rejected his truthful interview. To sell copies, the boss forced him to publish a sensationalized fake article that ruined her life, telling him to just get used to their corrupt methods. Sprinting through the storm, he screams out desperate apologies to the empty streets. He cries that the fake article was an order from top management and begs her to forgive him, reflecting that this dark, guilt-ridden history is the exact reason he fled that department to work in manga instead. Yamase reflects on his dark past at the Weekly Tabloid, a magazine notorious for profiting off extreme scandals. During his time as a deputy editor, he interviewed Kojika Meiko, whose real name is Shiga Shizuka, while she was incarcerated. He remembers the lurid details of her crime, the attempted murder of her parents with a kitchen knife. The horrific incident captured massive public attention, leaving the world to view her through a lens of morbid curiosity. He realizes a few years have passed, though he never expected her to be released so soon. Knowing he wrote a contemptible, fabricated article that ruined her public image, he admits it makes perfect sense that he incurred her wrath. However, he is deeply terrified and confused as to why she went through the elaborate cover of becoming a manga author just to get close to him. Coming to a sudden stop in the rain, he senses a chilling presence behind him. Kojika closes her umbrella, staring at him with an eerie, dead-eyed expression. Paralyzed by fear, he trips and falls backward, convinced she has finally come to kill him in retaliation. Panic completely overtakes him. Desperate, he drops to his knees in the puddles and pleads for his life. He tearfully apologizes, swearing he never actually wanted to hurt her, and begs for her forgiveness despite knowing he has no right to ask. Instead of attacking, she tosses her umbrella aside. Resting her hand on her hip, she throws her head back and bursts into a wide, manic laugh. Panting heavily, she stares down at him with a twisted, terrifying smile that perfectly matches the aura of the criminal he once wrote about. She then pulls a storyboard page from her bag and throws it onto the wet ground in front of him. Reintroducing herself as a new manga author, she chillingly orders him to use his editorial skills to make her famous, declaring that she intends to completely dominate every single part of him. Yamase recalls the day his former tabloid boss handed him the assignment to interview the imprisoned attempted murderer. The boss joked that the gritty task would toughen him up, comparing it to a dangerous undercover cult investigation he forced him into when he first joined the company. Frustrated but compliant, Yamase looked at the newspaper clipping of the young criminal, briefly thinking her ruined life was a waste. Back in the present, inside an abandoned underground tunnel, Yamase remains frozen in shock. Shiga simply stands up, opens her umbrella, and cheerfully informs him that she will await his answer at their next meeting. She walks away, leaving him trembling on the wet ground alongside the scattered storyboard pages. After taking a taxi, he rushes into his apartment and frantically locks the door. Slumping against the entrance, he breathes heavily, haunted by her chilling demand to dominate every part of him. He suddenly sneezes, realizing he needs to get out of his wet clothes. As he grabs his bag to stand up, a terrifying question crosses his mind. How did she know exactly where to find him in the rain? Inspecting the strap of his bag, he discovers a hidden pet GPS tracker. Panic sets in as he wonders how long she has been watching him. His paranoia rapidly escalates, leading him to fear she might have already broken into his room and hidden inside his closet. Terrified to stay in the apartment, he immediately runs outside. He throws the tracker onto the ground and violently smashes it beneath his foot, shouting curses at her. Meanwhile, Shiga is at her own home, calmly monitoring his exact location on her devices. When the tracker's signal suddenly cuts off, she remains completely unfazed. She simply turns to her computer and begins searching for nearby hotels, accurately predicting his next move. Safely locked inside his room, Yamase takes a shower and desperately tries to process the situation. He wonders why Shizuka, someone who should harbor a deep, vengeful grudge against him, would go through the elaborate trouble of adopting the alias Kojika Megumi just to approach him. He debates cutting her off completely or going straight to the police, but hesitates. He realizes that someone unhinged enough to plant a GPS tracker might escalate to even worse, unpredictable extremes if she realizes he is onto her. Deeply overwhelmed and seeking an escape from his terrifying reality, he sits down and starts binge reading one of his favorite manga series. Reaching the emotional climax of the 8th volume, he is moved to tears. He loves how a character named Luca drops his brave front to show his true vulnerability and cowardice while trying to save his friends. Finishing the volume, Yamase reflects on his profound love for the medium. He remembers joining the publishing company with the ultimate dream of creating his own magazine filled with incredible stories. However, after recalling his dark days at the tabloid and comparing his zero achievements to the laughing, successful Kawasaki, that dream feels further away than ever. Realizing he cannot keep running from reality, he pulls out the drenched storyboard that Shizuka threw at him and finally begins to read her work. As he reads the storyboard, he realizes it would be a massive loss to cut ties with Kojika Megumi. Her work is simply too brilliant to ignore. The next day, he meets with Shiga. She cheerfully greets him, and he suggests they head to their usual cafe. She playfully calls it their routine date spot, though he quickly corrects her that it is strictly a professional meeting. She tries to hold his hand as they walk, but he nervously pulls away, reminding himself to be wary of hidden GPS trackers. He wonders what she is plotting, entirely unsettled by how incredibly clingy she is acting after her terrifying reveal just days prior. Once inside the cafe, they sit next to each other. He internally tells himself to calm down, solidifying his dangerous resolve. He decides he will not step down as her editor. Determined to create a hit series, he resolves to make full use of her immense talent. He reasons that if revenge was the only thing on her mind, she has already had plenty of opportunities to hurt him. Furthermore, she is putting genuine effort into drawing her manga instead of half-assing it. Suddenly, she scoops up a spoonful of her ice cream and holds it out to him, telling him to open his mouth. He hesitates, deeply uncomfortable, but ultimately accepts the bite to prove his commitment to crossing this dangerous bridge with her. Smiling brightly, she declares that they should both do their best from now on. Forcing a smile in return, he agrees. In a chilling nightmare, our guy relives his past visit to the prison to interview an 18-year-old Shiga Shizuka. She is incarcerated for brutally stabbing her parents, who miraculously survived after witnesses spotted her walking down the street covered in blood. Hoping to get her to open up for the tabloid, he introduces himself and attempts to offer her a small gift. Suddenly, she slams her hands against the dividing glass. She aggressively scratches at the window until blood seeps from her fingernails, vowing to track him down and watch him forever once she is released. Yamase wakes up in a cold sweat, cursing the terrifying dream. His phone immediately buzzes with a morning text from Shiga, cheerfully stating she is looking forward to handing over her manuscript today. Full of dread, he is suddenly startled by the doorbell. Peeking through the peephole, he falls back in sheer terror upon seeing her standing right outside his apartment. He silently decides to pretend he is not home, ignoring the violently rattling door handle. However, when he checks the peephole again, he catches her crouching by the door with a pair of pliers, preparing to break the lock. Panicking, he shouts for her to stop and frantically throws the door open. She greets him with a polite good morning and casually waltzes inside, making herself right at home. Sweating profusely, he realizes she obviously used the hidden GPS tracker to pinpoint his exact address. Terrified by her absolute lack of boundaries, he mentally vows to stay strictly on his guard. Shiga casually asks if he is moving out. He bitterly thinks to himself that she is the entire reason he needs to. He reminds her they were scheduled to meet at the coffee shop at noon, but she explains she simply wanted to see him as quickly as possible. Frustrated but trapped, he listens as she presents a cake roll to celebrate finishing her manuscript. He takes the cake to the kitchen to cut it and prepare tea. While slicing it, his paranoia spikes, and he accidentally cuts his finger with the knife. She immediately rushes over, grabs his hand to stop the bleeding, and carefully wraps his finger with a bandage. She then takes over the knife to finish slicing the cake. Despite her sweet demeanor, he senses a deeply unsettling aura, reminding himself to stay sharp because she is still Shiga Shizuka. Suddenly, she intentionally cuts her own finger. She wraps it with an identical bandage and cheerfully declares that they now match. He forces a nervous laugh, completely terrified and desperately wishing she would leave. Trying to redirect the situation, he asks to see the manuscript. She hands over a thick 50-page physical draft. Feeling the weight of the paper, he briefly forgets his fear. Admiring her raw drawing skills, he allows himself to view her solely as the promising Kojika Megumi for a fleeting moment, pushing her true identity aside. However, as he reads, he notices a character named Hideo was inexplicably changed from a little sister to a little brother. She brushes it off as a random whim. Continuing through the story, he reads a conversation where Hideo mentions his father is a middle school teacher, his mother works at the same school, and he wants to attend a university in Tokyo. Yamase freezes in horror, realizing this is an exact, detailed recreation of his own family. Confirming his worst fears, she suddenly starts complimenting his mother's charming and tolerant personality. Smiling, she chillingly notes that his mother must be sad that she can no longer call him by his childhood nickname, Hana-chan. Listening to her terrifying comment, Yamase completely freaks out. He wonders how she could possibly know his childhood nickname and fears she might have actually contacted his family. Remembering that she previously attempted to murder her own parents, sheer terror washes over him. While she just sits there smiling at him, he completely snaps. He jumps up, screams at her to get out, violently pushes her out the front door, and slams it shut. Breathing heavily, he frantically calls his family's home over and over again, desperately praying for someone to answer. Finally, his mother picks up the phone, worriedly asking if it is an emergency. Hearing her voice, he lets out a massive sigh of relief, realizing his family is currently safe. Just to be absolutely sure, he asks if she has met any strange young women recently. When she confirms she has not, he apologizes for the sudden call and hangs up. Meanwhile, out in the hallway, Shiga remains standing right outside his apartment. Pressing her hands against the door as if she is lovingly hugging it, she lets out a twisted laugh and affectionately whispers his name.